and welcome to Not Another Cavs Podcast, the show for diehard Cavs fans, NBA degenerates, and basketball chaos enthusiasts. My name's Zach from Zach Gets Ball on YouTube and across the internet, and I'm your host of this new Cavs-centric NBA podcast. And on today's episode 2, which is actually happening a little bit quicker than I anticipated being able to do this again, but we're going to go ahead and get in a little bit early on the holiday spirit. I want to have a couple of things to be grateful for. A few diamond in the rough moments from the past couple of games that we've seen this week. I'm also going to attempt to answer the question, what do you do with Evan Mobley right now? And I'm going to attempt to lift the spirits of all Cavs fans everywhere by taking a look at some of the biggest shit shows in the NBA and remembering why we should be grateful for this team in the first place. I will also introduce a recurring segment called Who You Got. Subscribe on whatever you are consuming this on in this very moment, and let's get into this thing. All right, so the first thing that I wanted to touch on today is I haven't been on a microphone or camera or whatever since the Cavs debuted their new City Edition uniforms, and I felt like everybody got to share how they felt about it, except for me. And I was feeling a bit left out, and I feel like I have feelings that need to be felt and heard, and that's what 2025 is about, is being heard and having your feelings felt by all. I think. I don't really know. I don't get it. I don't get the orange sherbet creamsicle jerseys. I don't get it. One of the funniest things that I saw on Twitter about it was somebody saying like there's no sun in Ohio, which is like obviously that's ridiculous, but also we live here, we know. It's kind of rare this time of year. A lot of gloominess. And I guess when I think about the city of Cleveland, right? And I admit to not being native to Cleveland. That's not where I live. That's not where I grew up. I know that there are others who obviously do live there and have lived there all their lives, and they love it there, and that's all fantastic. When I think about Cleveland, I don't know how many things I would have on a list of like the first things that come to mind about Cleveland, Ohio, before I get to the fucking sunset. I don't know where that concept even came from. I'm not on the marketing team. I work in marketing though. If they'd love to hire me, I that'd be great. I mean, I like my job, so you know, I'm not in the market, but for the Cavs, I mean, come on. Probably shouldn't have said that out loud. Maybe I'll cut that part. Maybe I won't. It's my podcast. So the creamsicle jerseys, I just don't love the color. I also don't really understand the land branding. Again, not from Cleveland. Maybe it means something to people in Cleveland. They're going to be yelling at me right now. You're an idiot. You don't know anything. You don't even deserve to be a Cavs fan because you're not into the land. If that is the reaction that you have, thanks for giving it a try anyways. Have a great day. But I don't understand. I'm okay with some exploration with these City Edition uniforms. I just think they should actually reflect the city a little bit better than what that did. That looked like something that should have happened in Florida or like a Georgia peach or something. Creamsicle didn't do it for me. The floors were a lot. They were kind of daunting, but I felt like they were better than the uniforms. There was something cool about the gradient. Again, a little bright for my taste. I liked those floors better than I like the NBA Cup floors, though. It was better than the just gouging your eyes out red that we see on some of these NBA Cup courts, and even the cat. Like it's too much with the red and all this stuff. Just do the thing. Like just have the center of the court have a cool, strip or some kind of, color to it, and have the rest of it just be an NBA court. And it'll stand out enough to say, ooh, this is special. It's the NBA Cup. And also not assault people's eyeballs. But so I felt a lot better about the courts than I do about the NBA Cup courts and than I did about the uniforms. And that's my thoughts on the City Edition uniforms that you didn't ask for, but I gave to you anyways. And one of the reasons that I gave it to you is because so far this week, Cavs basketball has been a little bit of a downer. It hasn't been the strongest start to the season that everybody wanted. It hasn't been the prettiest start to the season that everybody wanted. It doesn't feel like the Cavs are really in rhythm, in sync. Their offense doesn't feel anything like what it felt last year. And that's just from I don't think that's all about the missing players. So one, I've been on this YouTube channel a ton talking about how important Darius Garland is to this team. So don't get that twisted up in my words in any way, shape, or form. Darius Garland is one of my favorite things to watch in basketball. People to watch in basketball, he's not a thing. I think that he is essentially the key that unlocks making everything else make sense for the Cavs on the offensive end of the basketball court. And so I don't downplay his absence or his importance to what they do. However, I also don't think that you can just blame health and injuries for the Cavs' start to the season and the process by which they have gone about their offensive scheme so far this season when the injuries aren't a surprise. We knew Garland was not going to be ready at the start of the season. We knew Strus was going to be out for a while. We knew with the offseason that we had that we put a bunch of dudes on this roster who have injury concerns. And ironically enough, the guys you think of right now haven't been the problem from a health standpoint. The Lonzo Balls, the Larry Nance Jr.'s, like those are dudes that miss time notoriously. So knowing that, you had to have had a plan of how this team plays a system and how this team plays basketball when they have to mix and match different lineups, because you knew you were going to have to throughout the season because of the collection of guys that you have on the team and on the roster. And so I have a hard time with it just skating, putting everything down as like, well, they're just not healthy right now. And so they don't have all their guys. And so they can't run their offense the way that they should be running their offense. I totally understand if the offense isn't as efficient or as effective because of the absences that you have in the lineup. When you have better players and they're doing the thing, then it works better. Maybe you have more plays break down and you have to get bailed out more often from play breakdowns. All of that would make sense to me. But this feeling that they just don't even know what to do, or how they try to get into offense and how they don't want to move sometimes, at all, that's where it gets frustrating. When it's like Evan Mobley or Donovan Mitchell just standing on the wing, dribbling the ball, and then they just try to take their guy. That's not how this team plays offense. We've seen it. We saw it all last year where they were the best offense in basketball. And it was how the ball moved and how guys were moving and cutting and everybody was involved and they were putting pressure on the rim. They were getting downhill, kicking it out, swinging the ball around. Everything was moving and flowing. And yet, we'll get into some of the numbers in a little bit. it's not like they didn't run a lot of pick and roll. So it's it's not like the Heat right now, who literally don't set screens at all. It's not like the Spurs of old, where it was like the beautiful game back, whatever. But it was a really great balance of movement off the ball moving, while also running pick and roll and putting your guys in the best position to be successful last year. And we're not doing a lot, like we're not seeing a lot of that this year. When I say we, I mean the people watching. We're not actually a part of the team. The whole we narrative thing, like sometimes that's I have a hard time with that, because I feel like I want to say we when I'm talking about the Cavs because it's the team that I root for, but at the same time, I'm not contributing shit to them. They're doing it all. So I don't have the right to say we, really. Do I? Please answer that to me. Do I have the right to say we aren't doing what we need to be doing to win basketball games, or are the Cavs not doing what they need to be doing to win at the level that we want them to as fans of that basketball team? Because that's kind of where I'm at. And so while they are 10-6, which is not a bad record to start this season, they're fourth in the East, which could be worse. They could be in the West, where they would be seventh. I don't think that this has been. It just hasn't looked like Cavs basketball, and we fancy this team a title contender, and so we want it to look like they're ready to compete at the highest level. And right now, they're not. They're not with all their guys, and it just looks clunky. And it hasn't been a super fun hang so far on a night in and night out basis watching this team play. But that doesn't mean, even in the past couple of games where it's been tough for long stretches, but there have been some bright spots. There have been a few things to be grateful for. So I wanted to bring some of those up. I've got a couple of individual moments that made you kind of stand up off of the couch, scream, and wake your child up and cause chaos and mayhem in your house. Maybe get the dog barking and going crazy. Maybe you live alone and you were jumping up and down in your boxers. I don't know. Do you? But there were a few of those moments. There were also a few kind of macro moments. And I don't have a ton to say on the macro level from the past couple of games, but I will say that it has seemed, at least for stretches of those games, that the process on offense has looked a little bit better, a little bit more like what we got used to seeing from this team last year, when again they were the best offense in basketball. It didn't start the week that way. Like the first quarter against the Bucks was rough. And as far as offensive process is concerned, it was like, here, Donovan, here's the ball. Take this ball, put it in the hoop for us, because we don't want to do anything else. Just you, please, for the love of God, save us. But then as that game went on, and I think a lot of it had to do with Sam Merrill coming back and hitting shots, I think that kind of ignited things and kind of made stuff start to make sense a little bit. But you did start to see more of the movement. More, I think it was, I think I saw a clip that like Tony Pesta put on Twitter where he showed a specific possession, and I thought it was good, where he talked about like getting into secondary actions. Like you don't have to just do the one thing and then like, oh, it's blown up, time to go ISO. Like you can get into stuff and then you can play off of that stuff. Like this isn't going to be the biggest X's and O's podcast in the world. This is not the dunker spot, but I mean, we can talk about some of that, right? Like you can not get what you want out of your first action and the play not be dead and done and everybody stop moving and somebody go ISO. that doesn't have to be the case. And you're starting to see a little bit more of that. And that's what Tony was pointing out in that clip. And I thought it was a good one, which is why I'm giving him a shout out here. He's probably not listening, so he's not going to know that happened. But you can tell him. All 6 of you can tell him. So there's more of that, a little bit more movement. I'd still love to see some more getting to the rim, but things are moving slowly in the right direction, particularly during different during different runs during the game. A few micro moments that I just want you to remember, right? We just want to have this moment to reflect, because there were some moments that brought you a lot of joy in that second. One of them was Craig Porter Jr.'s poster on Monday. I didn't think Craig Porter Jr. had that in him. I didn't. I like Craig Porter Jr. It was probably good I didn't have this podcast at that time, but I remember the off season before last season, and I had started to see things like Ty Jerome is definitely the third guard on this team, and I'm like, what? Why? Ty Jerome, he's barely been able to stay in a rotation. Why is it not Craig Porter Jr.? I like Craig Porter Jr. Why is he not going to be the third guard on this team? Well, then the season happened, and I figured out real quick why Ty Jerome was the third guard on this team, because holy shit. So that's a take that wouldn't have aged very well for me. I'd have been happy to be wrong, but holy hell, you'd be telling me I was a moron immediately. But still, I like Craig Porter Jr. I didn't think he had that in him. So that was fun. Even the Jarrett Allen on Şengün dunk that didn't count, it was still fun. Take the flop out of it. It was still fun. It was fun to see him do that to Alperen Şengün, who we just love so much in Cavs fandom. Don't we? Naquan Tomlin's energy? That's something to be grateful for. What kind of a breath of fresh air has it been to watch him just be a lunatic in his stints when he's on the floor? It's great. It's so much fun to just watch him go crazy. Now, I didn't really love the fact that he started in that game last night. Not because I don't think he deserves a chance and hasn't earned minutes, and I'm not happy for him, and I don't, enjoy the energy that he brings to the game. But I thought that starting him was a direct reflection of them trying to match what Houston does and trying to match up with what Houston does. And I think when you're using what the other team does as your guide or the decision to put your starting lineup together and make your decisions, then I think you're already acquiescing. I think you're already in a reactionary mode to the other team, and you haven't even started the game yet. I would personally have rather have seen Lonzo Ball in the starting lineup. He's still got size, if you're worried about the matchup there, but also it gives you a facilitator next to Donovan, and he can be he can be a threat on offense. I know that he's not started the year the greatest from a shooting standpoint, and it's taken him a little bit to try to kind of work the kinks out and kind of get used to everybody. But I would have rather have seen them go that direction personally, and try to lean into what they can do well on offense. Try to lean into his facilitation and try to lean into moving the ball and having a guy that, while it hasn't been the greatest shooting start, you still got to guard him on the 3-point line to start the game. I think I would have felt better about that mentally Now you can say that, maybe you want to keep Lonzo Ball in the headspace of like being that sixth man type of a role, and not get him out of that rhythm. Sometimes, that guys like to have that repetition and that consistency. If that's the case, totally get it. Still maybe go Craig Porter Jr. then, and have you don't get the size that way, but you have a guy that can handle the ball and put some pressure, on put some pressure on those big dudes to have to guard and have to slide their, move their feet and try to get some penetration and try to, get them into rotation. Would have been the way that I would have liked to seen them go, and then bring Naquan Tomlin in for energy. He doesn't have to not play just because you didn't put him in the starting lineup. So I don't know. That's my thought, but I've still loved the energy that he brings. So let's be grateful for that. And then not just these, the stretches during these games, the entire start to the season, the past 3 years, or I think it's been 3 years that he's been there. Just the fact that Donovan Mitchell can go nuclear at any time. Having a guy like that, you always have a chance to make a run, try to make a comeback, and just honestly have a lot of joyful moments watching basketball played, because he does stuff that's just crazy. And I think we should be grateful for that. So this is our giving thanks segment. Now I want to get into Evan Mobley in particular. What do you do with Evan Mobley? Because I mean, I've seen people on Twitter already today that want to trade him because they think he's just terrible, which is just asinine, by the way. Evan Mobley is not terrible at basketball. Like, come on. What are we doing here? But it has seemed so far this year that there's been such a focus on Mobley's development in this one specific direction, where it's like, make him a creator, make him an offensive hub in a way that he just like brings the ball up and he's your offense. And I think it was clear that they were emphasizing that from day one. Evan Mobley's been playing since game one like a guy who's heard all summer long that if the Cavs are going to win a championship, he has to be the best player. And he's clearly putting that pressure on himself. He is. And it's weird to me that has clearly been a point of emphasis, is putting him in more of those positions. But then we hear things like, it was last week at some point in time, it was, Kenny Atkinson talking about how he had a meeting with Evan Mobley to kind of tell him he's getting away from too far away from his game and what makes him great and whatever. And it's like, well, isn't that what you've been trying to do? Like, isn't that something that could have been taking place in a huddle during a game? Why does that take a private meeting? Because it seems like that's how the offense has been built for this season so far. So why is that how are we saying that that's Evan Mobley getting too far away from who he is, and we're not running our offense right? If that's the case. So like, which is it? I don't know. To me, that's weird. And I think it's fine to focus more during the regular season on developing Evan Mobley. But I think you got to develop the right things, personally. And I don't believe that Evan Mobley's game is enhanced by just catching the ball on the wing and being expected to break a guy down on the dribble. I don't see Evan Mobley as the player who that's going to be his future. I don't see that. I think he can create. I think he can be an offensive hub engine. I think he can start possessions. I think he can get loose and transition and be an absolute menace. And I think that he can have moments, where he does take a guy. Like, I think all that's fine, but I don't think give Mobley ball on wing and let him cook is, I don't think it's good for their offense in the now. I don't think it's good for Mobley's offense in the now. I don't think it's the right thing to focus on for Mobley's future. And I don't think that it really does a lot for the team's future either, because if you get to the point in the playoffs where that's your where that's the play that you're going to call up is just give Mobley the ball on the wing and clear out, like that seems unlikely. Doesn't feel like that's ever going to be your go-to in a key moment in the playoffs either. So why are we doing it this way? Right? And so I want to be clear. I'm not saying that you don't try to develop Mobley's offense. I'm not saying that you don't try to put him in positions to be more of a hub and facilitator and creator in getting to his stuff, but like have him do it from positions that are more advantageous for him than just being given the ball on the wing and saying, "All right, good luck." So one of the things that I wanted to do here is just pull up his shot chart for this year, and I think it's telling. And there's a few things to me that are telling about it. One is his volume from the 3-point line, all being above the break. He's getting nothing from the corners. He's taken 3 threes from the corners all year, which is like just tells me that he's not getting any of kind of the easy ones set up for him, from the 3-point line. He's spending so much time on the perimeter, like above the break, like he's a guard, and he's not. He's not a guard, and you can see it in his shot chart. But that doesn't mean that he shouldn't take threes either. Like particularly, look at that big old like green zone. If you're watching this and can see the chart on the screen, if you're listening, I'm going to tell you there's a big old green zone on his shot chart that is at the top of the key from 3, where he's shooting 47% on threes from the top of the key on 19 of them. Yet he's taken more from each of the wings than he has at the top of the key. And while he's shooting well from the right wing, you'll take it. You'll take 36%, above the break from Evan Mobley any day of the week. But from the left, he's shooting 25%. And so I guess all I'm really saying there is that you can use that. That can be something that you try to emphasize. If you're going to get him in a spot where he's going to be, have a look from 3, try to get him in the middle of the floor when he's doing it, at least to the right side of the floor, and kind of lean into his where he's shooting the ball particularly well from the 3-point line. A couple other things that stand out to me is the pretty much lack of representation here in the dunker spots. He's taken a whopping 16 shots from the dunker spots. Why? Why 16 only? Like, again, I understand that you're trying to develop him. You don't want him to just be a play finisher. But it seems like we've gone a little too far in one direction, doesn't it? 16 shots from the dunker spots when he shoots 50% from there, which is well above league average. Like, let's get him some looks from there, shall we? That's probably a good idea. And then at the rim, the guy shoots 61% at the rim. Again, that is above league average, but like he's a great play finisher. I would like to see more balance, to it, to have him finish some more plays. And so the reason that I'm going through that and why I'm highlighting those particular zones for that is I think that that's a big part of the answer to what do you do with Evan Mobley right now. I think that you can, again, continue his development, but try to develop him to get to those spots more frequently. For instance, the pick and roll game can be very beneficial for him to get to those spots where he is particularly effective. And this team isn't running the pick and roll like they have in the past. Last year, when they were the best offense in basketball, they ran pick and roll almost 25 times a game with their ball handlers, which was 22% of their possessions. And that was the most in the NBA. But let me ask you, when you were watching those games last year, did it feel like the previous iteration of the offense with JB Bickerstaff when it felt like it was just high pick and roll, high pick and roll, high pick and roll, high pick and roll, Donovan's turn, Darius's turn, Donovan's turn, Darius's turn, high pick and roll every single time down the floor? No, it didn't. And yet they still ran more pick and roll than anybody else in basketball. I think you can run some more pick and roll because this year that's down to 20 possessions, only 17% of their offense, which is ninth in the NBA, where the whole league is actually running less pick and roll compared to what they did last year. So when I'm saying run more pick and roll, I want to make it clear. I'm not talking about how you felt about JB Bickerstaff's offense. I don't mean Houston James Harden. I don't mean what you think of when you think of Trae Young's Atlanta Hawks. I'm talking like 5 or 6 more possessions a game to be more in line with what they were doing last year when they were the best offense in basketball. And in those additional possessions, I think you use Evan Mobley as the screener, and he has options. He can set that pick and pop to the top of the key, where he can say, Donovan Mitchell gets blitzed. He can just toss it over to Evan Mobley for a wide open 3 from the top of the key, where he is shooting 47% this season. And that look is going to be there all day long. And he can hit it all day long. You can have him roll to the basket, where he is an insane finisher, as we talked about. 50% from the dunker spots, 61% at the rim. Be the roll man in that traditional finishing capacity. He can do that at a high level, obviously. And so you can get him some easier looks that way and get his confidence up for when he does take those shots that are farther out from the basket. You can get his confidence up for when he does have the ball on the perimeter and he's thinking about trying to take a guy off the dribble. He's not going to be thinking, he'll be reacting in the flow of a basketball game he feels good about because he's gotten some easy ones. He's seen the ball go through and he's probably dunked on somebody and he's really feeling himself. So some more of that would be nice to see, again, sprinkled in to what they're doing. I think the other thing that they can do, and this is probably the part where the development comes in the most, is that you can have him set that pick and then get him the ball in the short roll around the nail and have him create from there, as opposed to just tossing him the ball in the wing and trying to get him to create from that spot. Doing it this way, one, it gets him the ball in the flow of the offensive possession rather than from a standstill. It's going to create the opportunities for mismatches, not just for him, but let's be honest, most of the time it's going to be for him, but also for the ball handler. If they switch a big onto Mitchell, like, sorry, that dude's cooked. And if they help off of that, Evan Mobley's going to have a small on him. So, like, the reason that pick and roll has been run to death in the NBA is because it fucking works. So do it, right? He's going to get easier opportunities that way. He'll get some advantages that he gets to work out of. And he's going to get some easier looks. I distinctly remember a couple of plays in that Milwaukee game that stand out in my mind and just drove me nuts. There was a guy at the top of the key that had the ball who wasn't a primary ball handler. I don't even remember who it was. In all of these situations, but it would be like, guy top of the key has the ball. He's looking to give it up to somebody who is more of a play starter, right? And you got Lonzo Ball coming up one wing and Evan Mobley coming up to bail this guy out. And they give it to Mobley instead of Lonzo Ball. And what do they do in that possession? Evan Mobley is just going to start dribbling. And then who the hell knows what's about to happen next? And sometimes it ain't pretty. But another time, mixed in with all of this, he gets the ball right above the nail. Same guy guarding him. He's only, 2-3 feet closer to the basket in that spot. But you can tell he is significantly more comfortable because he takes 1-2 dribbles, takes the guy right to the rim, and finishes. It was beautiful. Beautiful basketball from Evan Mobley. And that's what I'm talking about here. Mixing in more of that. It doesn't mean he never gets the ball anywhere else. It doesn't mean he's not allowed to shoot from anywhere else on the floor. It doesn't mean that he can only be a finisher at the rim. It just means a few more possessions with him in a position to succeed. Because I don't think that you have to try to develop this guy to be Giannis for him to be the best version of Evan Mobley. That's just my thoughts on things. Now that we've gone through that, Cavs fans are not stoked about the way this season has started. And I would say that there's a decent portion who are actually quite frustrated. So I wanted to go through a few things to kind of remind us all that it could be worse. We were grateful for some things that the Cavs have done and some moments just even during this week earlier. Now we're going to be kind of grateful for we don't have it this bad. So I saw this on Twitter today and I double checked it and I just had to share it here. The bottom 8 teams in the Western Conference are currently on a combined 30-game losing streak. Not us. Could be worse. And I thought I'd take that a step further a little bit. And just take a little span of the league and just appreciate our place. Because we are not one of the biggest shit shows in the NBA as Cavs fans. So let's talk about some of the teams who are. The Sacramento Kings. Remember Light the Beam? Remember that 3 seed that they had? That soft-ass 3 seed when it took like 48, 49 wins to get? Remember Tyrese Halliburton? De'Aaron Fox? Right now, if you are a Sacramento Kings fan, you are stuck with DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, trying to recreate the failures of the Bulls, but do it in the Western Conference. And Domantas Sabonis has got to be looking around like, what is happening here? And what do you even do? What options do you have if you are the Kings? You're not getting anything back in a trade for DeMar DeRozan. You literally can't trade Zach LaVine. The Bulls couldn't trade Zach LaVine when you traded for him. You might be able to get something from Domantas Sabonis, but probably not as much as you think. Not what you would consider his equal value. There's not going to be that many teams that are going to be like, oh yeah, we're a Domantas Sabonis away from being a championship team. What's that list? Who's gonna drop 4 first rounders for Domantas Sabonis right now? Who's gonna give you 2? It's tough as a Kings fan. And name the young guys on that roster that you are stoked about. I'll wait. Yeah. If there was a masterclass in how to destroy a promising franchise, it would be taught by the Sacramento Kings front office. How about the New Orleans Pelicans? Oh, gosh. Zion's hurt again. We're on year 5 of, well, this team could really be looking to break through. Look at all this talent that they've got. If things just click, if Zion can be healthy, they could show that growth. This team could be super dangerous. Well, they suck again. They got a collection of players that every team would want, but absolutely do not work collectively, clearly, because it's just been bad for the Pels. And I mean, unless you're, they're on my, radar alert, I guess you could say, of, keeping an eye on them as a blow it up candidate and, a team that could get real assets from good teams if they have any to give up for some of those guys on that team. But it's weird, there's some dudes on the Pelicans that are talented enough that you wouldn't want to get rid of them. But how many times are we going to watch the same movie over and over again in New Orleans? It's wild, just wild. Not Cleveland. How about the LA Clippers? You got Kawhi Leonard, who we all know doesn't play. Not to mention the investigation and all of the tree planting hoopla that's happening. That's a dark cloud over a franchise. They're old collectively, fragile. Guys are getting hurt left and right. They owe the Thunder their pick, which is terrifying for the rest of the league, particularly the teams that are good. The future is absolutely bleak for the Clippers. What do you do there? Would you rather have that be your reality? Remember the offseason, just before the season started and everybody was doing their over-under pods? And it seemed like one of the most popular picks out there was the Clippers over. They're going to be so good. They're going to be so good. They're going to be amazing. It was a lot of, I think because they finished so close. Did they have the same win-loss record last year as the Lakers? Am I misremembering that? Or were they within a game? I don't remember. But that was I feel like that was one of the hot topics coming into the season, right before it started in that over-under time. It was who's gonna get more wins out of the LA teams, the Clippers or the Lakers? And everybody thought it was the Clippers. Everybody. How's that going? Memphis Grizzlies. Ja's hurt again. He's already had drama with his new coach. He got suspended for that drama. This is the new coach that was hired because Ja didn't like the offense that they ran last year with the other coach. The one that made them a really good offense and a good basketball team because he couldn't dribble the air out of the ball and run pick and roll every single possession. So that coach, that not just that coach, but also the assistant they brought to learn that system, they got fired. What are you going to do with this coach? You going to fire him too? Because he apparently called Ja out in the locker room for not trying. That's tough. Dallas, I think we've shit on the Mavs enough for the Nico situation, haven't we? Would you want that to be your team? At least you have Cooper Flagg, I guess. The Indiana Pacers, a lot of people thought they were going to stay competitive because of the collection of gritty veterans that they have on their team. The role players that they had. I thought they'd be at least in games. I figured they'd win in the 30s or so. They've been real bad. They suck without Halliburton, which shouldn't be super surprising given the fact that, not having Halliburton, who their entire offense revolves around, you at least understand, but it's not fun to be a Pacers fan right now. The Wizards, the Nets, they suck. They're supposed to suck, but they do. They're doing a good job at sucking. How about the Hornets? They've been a disaster for years. They're still not good. I'm not a LaMelo guy, but counting on that. Will Brandon Miller, be able to have get through these early injuries and have a healthy career at some point in time? I don't know. Nobody knows the answer to that question, but we could be asking it, but we're not, because we're Cavs fans, and our team's 10-6. Yeah, it's not been the prettiest 10-6. They haven't been the juggernaut we wanted them to be. They didn't come out to a 15-0 start like they did last year, but things are okay. Things are okay for Cavs fans. We're all right. Okay, so we've been going for a little while now. I don't even know how long. But I want to do a couple other things real quick. So since this is episode 2, I wanted to give you a little bit of a creator journey on me for the Zach Gets Ball brand a little bit. Just kind of give you a little insight as to how I got here. How Zach Gets Ball was born, I guess you could say. So I mentioned I did content outside of basketball for a while, 5 years or so, with Belated Binge. I mentioned that I had tried different things in the basketball space when I started kind of dipping my toe in, and I just kind of, I don't know, I thought you might enjoy hearing what some of them were, because you weren't around here for that. So the first thing that I started to do was I was going for that like sketch comedy type of a thing, making the skits. I'd been watching a lot of Ryan George. I don't know if you've watched Ryan George, if you're familiar. If you ever heard of Pitch Meetings on YouTube, he's got his own channel too, where he does something similar. But he's one of those sketch comedy guys that plays multiple characters, and he's got this one for Screen Rant called Pitch Meetings, and it's just so funny. He plays a writer guy and a producer guy, and basically uses it to make fun of movies that come out. And he has the writer guy, pitch the premise in a sarcastic way, and the producer guy kind of make fun of it and also make fun of the process of making movies, where it's like, oh, money, yeah. And he's got some bits, and he's just, it's very sarcastic humor. It's really good. And I'd been watching a ton of it, and I was like, you know what? Who's doing that for sports? Like, who's doing that for basketball? How could I do something with that? And I didn't realize at the time that there were actually, people on TikTok that were doing that kind of thing, playing different, characters within the sports genre. I just didn't even know that it was happening. So I thought I was being real original, stealing an idea from somebody else in a different in a different space and making it my own. Real original is what I thought. I was calling it Trade Meetings, and my premise was going to be, it was mostly going to revolve around, player movement, front office situations, and basically have like GM guy and like, GM and the owner, or GM and, a player negotiating, two GMs, going back and forth on, trade haggling and stuff like that. And I expanded a little bit from there. But like the first video was like when Dame Lillard, requested a trade. That was like the first thing that happened that I made, a crappy video about. It was production quality, not strong, not high. But it was kind of fun, but it was really difficult to like sustain that. For starters, the new CBA made trades way complicated, and kind of killed the whole like, who says no concept in a lot of ways. So that didn't help me. I did a few like fake NBA debate shows talking about like Wemby. I did like a fake crowd interview thing when the Cavs won Summer League. I did a fake like support group for all the teams that James Harden had been on and blown up. And I don't know. I still think there are funny ideas there, but it wasn't something that really caught fire. The production quality was actually way harder than I thought it was going to be for what I was doing. ended up not being the most sustainable thing in the world. Then I had this idea for a podcast that was kind of geared. The idea of it was that I remember very fondly watching Sports Center to just get caught up on like what happened the night before in the games and stuff. And so the idea was going to be like, come to this podcast for a quick recap of the games you didn't get to watch, what happened, who won. And I literally called it that. It was Who Won. The podcast for the busy fan who doesn't get to see all the games, but just wants to know who won without the hot takes and clickbait. And so I did that for like a month or two. And a few episodes actually did okay. It turns out when you're a dad with a young child, getting up at the ass crack of dark and recording that every single day, just not a sustainable way to live your life and survive. So that one didn't really catch. And that's when I kind of started the shorts game that I've kind of the style that I have now on across social media and on like YouTube Shorts, with kind of taking different angles at it, but kind of injecting a little bit of my my sarcastic personality, if you will, into the kind of news and highlights and stat recaps and stuff like that. And that's sort of where that angle started. The funniest part of Luka dropping 70 or whatever it was is that he actually played defense and kind of going through that. The funniest part from Joel Embiid when he scored 70 was that before the game, Greg Popovich did a press conference and joked that Wemby was going to dominate him and stuff him in the basket. It's these types of videos kind of started to become kind of my thing, and I kind of expanded out from there. I did some long form videos on YouTube, and some of those did pretty well. Started gaining a little bit of a following, and the more that I was doing, the more of that stuff that I was doing, the more I was leaning into like no team was getting more attention on my channel than the Cavs, because I'm a Cavs fan. While I was making content about kind of the NBA as a whole, and even dabbling in some other not just NBA topics. I've done some WNBA stuff during that season. I've dabbled in a little bit of baseball. A couple like Ohio State hoops videos, like those. I've dabbled around a little bit, but the main crux has always been on the NBA and what's been going on there, and it's always been heavier Cavs. And so when I was doing kind of like a repositioning of what my content was going to be, that's how this podcast came to be, because it was like NBA content, heavy focus on the Cavs because I'm a Cavs fan. It's going to fit within what I'm already doing, but the most fun that I've had making content has been in the podcast format, where I actually get to show my personality, do a little bit of this storytelling, and it doesn't have to be like super scripted and poignant and like highlight heavy. It can be more of a personal a personal touch than what the video space, the very tight visual medium demands. And so that's kind of how I got here. Zach Gets Ball. Honestly, I kind of just I think that it reflects my sarcasm a little bit, kind of kind of on the surface, but also I think it rolls off the tongue just like basketball does. Basketball, Zach Gets Ball. That's as creative as it got right there. And ChatGPT said it was a good idea, so I ran with it. Me and ChatGPT are becoming friends, doing all this stuff on my own, but I did not start that way. But I'm starting to see why people use it sometimes. Anyways, so that's the idea, the premise behind Zach Gets Ball. That's how it came to be. That's how that's how this podcast kind of started, and I hope you're enjoying being here. So I want to do something else. I want to introduce a segment to the show that I plan to be pretty recurring. We're going to do this fairly often. It's called Who You Got. And today I'm going to do it in I guess, celebration of the fact that LeBron James is back playing basketball. And by the way, how stupid was the narrative that he was going to come in and tank the Lakers? Like he couldn't play with Luka and Austin Reeves because they were playing well. LeBron fucking James can't play with those guys. Comes in and gets 12 assists right off the bat. Yeah, I think he's going to be fine. I think it's going to work out fine. They'll be able to play together. But in celebration of that, because I've got a LeBron jersey hanging behind me right now. So I want to introduce the Who You Got segment, and we're going to do it we're going to start with a bang. So the idea of Who You Got is a hypothetical one-on-one game matchup, whatever, of one current player versus one historical player. So it's basically one current guy versus one legend. Both of them are in their prime. Who would win in that one-on-one matchup? And so I'm going to pose the matchup here. We'll take it to social media. In this case, I actually have posted this video in the past, and so I will resurrect it on my social media feed to make it a little easier for you to find. You will comment on who you think would win, who you got in that matchup, and then on the next episode, I will share my thoughts on that particular matchup, as well as what I learn from you via the comment section. Is that simple enough? I feel like it's pretty simple. If I can think it up and, make it a thing, it's simple enough for you to follow. So this first Who You Got segment, we're just going to do it. We're going to do the battle of the GOATs. LeBron, Jordan. Hypothetical, one-on-one, both in their primes. Who is winning that one-on-one matchup? You will let me know on social media, and I will share my thoughts and yours on the next episode of this podcast. And that's it for this episode of said podcast. Not Another Cavs Podcast. Episode 2 is in the books. You made it. Congratulations. I'm Zach. Please subscribe if you want more Cavs content, NBA chaos, and more of my nonsense.